You know, there's this weird thing about families. They're supposed to be your safe haven, your biggest fans, right? The people who lift you up. But for me, growing up, my family felt less like a cheer squad and more like a panel of highly critical judges, constantly holding up a scoreboard that always had my name next to the lowest score. And the main thing they judged me on, my chosen path in life, the one they were so sure was destined for failure. It all started, really, the moment I deviated from the family plan in my household. The plan was clear, carved in stone, passed down through generations: go to a good university, get a respectable degree, preferably in law, medicine, or finance, then secure a stable corporate job with excellent benefits. My older sister, Jessica, was the golden child who epitomized this plan. She graduated top of her class from an Ivy League, sailed into a prestigious law firm, and was already on the partner track by her late 20s. My parents paraded her accomplishments like trophies, a constant, unspoken reminder of the path I should have taken. And then there was me, Sarah, the one who spent hours drawing in her sketchbook, lost in worlds of her own creation, the one who, in high school, fell head over heels for digital art, for animation, for creating stories with pixels and light, while Jessica was cramming for her SATs. I was teaching myself Photoshop and experimenting with video editing software. They saw it as a phase, a hobby. I saw it as my future. "Sarah, dear, that's sweet," my mom would say, peering at one of my digital paintings with a strained smile. "But what are you going to do with that? How will you make a living? It's not a stable career like Jessica's." My dad, ever the pragmatist, was more blunt. "Art is fine as a pastime, Sarah, but you need to think about your future. A degree in something practical, something that guarantees a paycheck." He'd always emphasize guarantees, as if creativity was synonymous with destitution. If you've ever had your dreams minimized, your passion dismissed as a childish fantasy by the very people who were supposed to encourage you, then you know exactly the kind of knot I felt in my stomach every time these conversations came up. Seriously, if you've ever been told you're destined for failure, hit that like and subscribe button, and let me know in the comments below if you've ever had to prove your worth to your own family. I need to know I'm not alone in this fight. The real turning point, the moment the destined for failure label truly cemented itself, was during my senior year of high school, while Jessica was applying for her master's in corporate law, and my parents were already talking about her stellar career trajectory. I announced I wanted to pursue a career in digital content creation. I wanted to build an online brand, tell stories through animation, maybe even develop educational content. I knew it was unconventional, but I felt it deep in my bones. This was my path. The reaction was devastating. "A YouTuber? Sarah," Jessica scoffed, a mixture of disbelief and disdain on her face. "You want to make videos in your bedroom for a living? Do you know how many people try that? It's a pipe dream. You need a fallback." My mom wrung her hands. "But darling, what about a degree you won't have any qualifications? How will you get a real job if this viral thing doesn't work out?" The word viral was said with air quotes, as if it were a ridiculous, ephemeral concept. My dad just stared at me, his face impassive. "Sarah, we've invested a lot in your education. We expect you to make sensible choices. This is not sensible. You will fail. You are destined for failure if you pursue something so unstable. We will not support this." His words hit me like a physical blow. Destined for failure, not "you might struggle" or "it will be hard," but a definitive, crushing prophecy. And the "we will not support this" meant exactly what it sounded like: no financial help, no emotional encouragement, no safety net. They were effectively cutting me off, not with anger, but with a cold, calculated disapproval designed to force me onto their preferred path. It was lonely, so incredibly lonely. While my classmates were excitedly discussing college orientations and dorm life, I was holed up in my room, poring over online tutorials, trying to teach myself advanced animation techniques, desperately trying to prove them wrong every time I heard Jessica on the phone, talking about her high-profile cases or her impressive network. The weight of their expectations and my perceived shortcomings pressed down on me. I tried to explain my vision, the burgeoning digital economy, the potential for independent creators. I showed them examples of successful YouTubers, artists, and entrepreneurs who had built empires outside of traditional education. But their minds were closed. They saw only risk, instability, and a fundamental disrespect for their values. "Those are outliers, Sarah," Jessica would say, dismissing my examples with a wave of her hand. "One in a million. You need to be realistic. You're just setting yourself up for disappointment." Their constant skepticism, the subtle digs, the pity in their eyes, it was a constant. Insidious drip. Drip. Drip that slowly eroded my confidence. There were nights I cried into my pillow, wondering if they were right. Maybe I was destined for failure. Maybe I was just a dreamer, too naive for the real world they so confidently inhabited. The financial aspect was particularly challenging, since they wouldn't support my unstable path. I had to fund everything myself. I took on part-time jobs, tutoring, dog walking, anything to save up for new software licenses, a better graphics tablet, online courses. Every dollar earned felt like a small victory against their predictions. Every late night spent working after a tiring shift, fueled by instant coffee, was a testament to my determination. My parents and Jessica never missed an opportunity to subtly remind me of my financial precarity. "How are you paying for your rent? Sarah, is your little online hobby covering it?" they'd ask, their voices laced with feigned concern. They'd talk about Jessica's new apartment, her designer clothes, her exotic vacations, all implicitly contrasting it with my humble, self-funded existence. One Thanksgiving, my aunt, a retired school principal, pulled me aside. "Sarah," she said, her voice soft but firm, "you're a bright girl. It's not too late to enroll in community college. Get some basic credits. Then you can transfer to a proper university. Your parents would be so relieved." It was always about their relief, their approval, never about my happiness or my vision. The weight of their judgment was immense, a constant companion. It wasn't just the words, it was the entire atmosphere of disappointment that hung over me whenever I was around them. I was the cautionary tale, the one who chose the wrong path, the one they worried about. But sometimes, pressure creates diamonds. And in my case, their constant negativity, their unwavering belief in my failure, slowly, painfully, transformed into a powerful, almost unbreakable resolve. Every time they told me I couldn't, I became more determined to prove that I could. Their "destined for failure" became my silent mantra, a challenge I was utterly committed to overcoming. I immersed myself in the online world, finding communities of fellow artists and creators who understood my passion, who celebrated experimentation, and who saw the immense potential in unconventional careers. They became my chosen family, offering encouragement, advice, and a sense of belonging I never found at home. Their validation, born of shared experience and genuine belief, started to replace the void left by my family's constant dismissals. I started small, my first animated short, a quirky little tale about a lonely robot, got a few thousand views. My first digital art print sold for a modest sum. These were tiny victories, but to me, they were monumental. They were proof that I wasn't destined for failure. I was building something real, brick by painstaking brick. And I was doing it on my own terms, without their support, their money, or their belief. The journey was lonely, filled with self-doubt and financial anxiety, but beneath it all, a quiet fire burned, a fire fueled by their skepticism, by their predictions of my downfall. I knew that one day, my success would be undeniable. It wouldn't be confined to my small online communities. It would reach them, without me ever having to say a word. And when that happened, the true revelation wouldn't just be about my success. It would be about the profound, unearned judgment they had cast upon me. The story of my failure was about to go viral, but not in the way they imagined. It was going to be my success story going viral. Without them knowing, the echoes of "destined for failure" haunted me, a persistent, insidious hum in the background of my life. My family's dismissals weren't just words. They were heavy chains, trying to hold me back, trying to drag me down to their predefined idea of what success looked like. But instead of breaking me, those chains forged something stronger within me, an unyielding resolve. I knew, deep down, that the only way to truly silence their doubts was to build something undeniably real, something so big they couldn't ignore it, even if I had to do it in silence, out of their judgmental gaze. This was the start of my silent grind and unseen battles. After that devastating conversation with my parents and Jessica, where they essentially cut me off financially and emotionally, I felt a stark, terrifying loneliness. Most of my friends were packing for college, embarking on what felt like glamorous, exciting new chapters. I was left in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by my art supplies and a secondhand computer, feeling like a stranded alien. But that loneliness also brought a fierce clarity. If they weren't going to support me, I had to support myself. Every penny I needed for software, for online courses, for basic living expenses, had to come from my own effort. I took on any odd job I could find walking dogs in the sweltering summer heat, tutoring exasperated middle schoolers in math, a subject I barely tolerated, even cleaning houses on weekends. The hours were long. The pay was often meager, but every dollar earned was a small act of defiance against their destined for failure prophecy. Still working those odd jobs, Sarah, Jessica would ask during one of our rare, strained phone calls. Her voice would be laced with thinly veiled pity. "You know, my firm is looking for summer interns. It's not glamorous, but it's stable." She clearly thought I was just drifting, incapable of anything beyond temporary gigs. The thought of taking an internship from her, a symbol of everything I was fighting against, made my stomach churn. My parents, too, maintained their position. They never explicitly asked about my online brand or my digital art. It was always, "Have you thought about applying to community college? It's not too late to get on the right track." Or, "Your cousin Emily just got a scholarship to business school. She's so focused." The message was clear. They were still holding out hope that I would give up my fantasy and conform to their expectations. The lack of emotional and financial support from my family was a constant ache, a gaping wound that never quite healed. But paradoxically, it also became my greatest motivator every time I felt exhausted, every time self-doubt crept in. I'd remember their dismissive faces, their confident predictions of my downfall, and that memory would light a fire under me, pushing me to work harder, to learn faster, to prove them wrong. I immersed myself in the world of digital creation. My bedroom became my studio, my lab, my office. I spent countless hours devouring online tutorials, experimenting with new software, and practicing my craft. I learned animation principles, storytelling techniques, video editing, sound design, even basic coding for interactive experiences. It was a relentless, self-imposed curriculum, far more demanding than any college course. I wasn't just learning, I was obsessed. My first real breakthrough came in the form of a small online community. It was a forum for independent animators and digital artists, a small corner of the internet where people celebrated creativity and shared knowledge without judgment. There, I found my tribe. They saw my passion, recognized my talent, and offered encouragement and constructive criticism. One artist, a seasoned animator named Liam, became my informal mentor. He was a quiet, unassuming man who had built a successful career working remotely for major animation studios, all without a traditional art school degree. He saw something in my early work, a raw potential that resonated with him. "Kid," he messaged me one day after I'd posted a particularly ambitious short animation. "You've got a unique voice. Don't let anyone tell you it's not valid. The industry is changing. Talent and grit trump a piece of paper any day." Liam's words were like water in a desert. He became the validation I desperately needed, a counterpoint to my family's constant negativity. He challenged me, pushed me, and offered invaluable advice on everything from technical skills to navigating the freelancing world. He understood the grind because he had lived it. I also met Maya, a brilliant digital marketer and social media strategist. Through a freelancing platform, she was building her own business, and we quickly connected over our shared struggles as young independent creators trying to make a living outside of corporate structures. Maya became my closest confidant, my sounding board, and eventually, my first business partner. She understood the emotional toll of building something from nothing, and her unwavering belief in my vision was infectious. "You're not failing, Sarah," she'd tell me during our late-night video calls. Both of us exhausted but exhilarated. "You're building brick by painful brick. And what you're building is going to be stronger, because it's truly yours." With Liam's mentorship and Maya's partnership, my venture slowly began to take shape. I started taking on small freelance projects, animated explainers for startups, social media graphics for small businesses, character design for indie game developers. The money was inconsistent, often barely enough to cover my modest living expenses and invest in new software. There were many nights I ate ramen, staring at my bank account balance, battling profound self-doubt. Was my dad right? Was I just setting myself up for disappointment? One particularly tough month, a major client project got delayed, leaving me with a gaping hole in my income. I was stressed, anxious, and dangerously close to asking my parents for help, a thought that filled me with dread, knowing it would be met with a triumphant, "See? We told you so." I called Maya, tears welling in my eyes. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Maya," I choked out. "It's too hard. The money is so uncertain. Maybe I should just get a real job." Maya listened patiently, then her voice came through, firm and resolute. "No, Sarah, absolutely not. You are not quitting. This is part of the journey. Every entrepreneur hits these walls. What you're doing is harder, riskier than any corporate job. But it's also more rewarding. Remember why you started this. Remember what they said." Her words, and Liam's unwavering belief in my talent, pulled me back from the brink. I pushed through that difficult month, taking on extra small gigs, working even longer hours, and slowly, the tide began to turn. My reputation in the online animation and digital content community grew. Word of mouth spread. I started getting referrals, my portfolio filled with increasingly impressive projects. I even launched my own small online course on digital animation techniques, which, to my surprise, started generating a steady stream of passive income. My living situation improved. I moved from my childhood bedroom into a small, affordable apartment that also doubled as my workspace. It was liberating to have my own space, a place where I could work and create without the looming shadow of family judgment. My parents and Jessica, still completely oblivious to the true scale of my progress, continued their subtle dismissals. When I moved into my own apartment, my mom called, her voice tinged with pity. "Oh, Sarah, is it a nice apartment, you know? Jessica's firm just gave her a housing stipend for her downtown place. It's so convenient." I just smiled to myself. My nice apartment was entirely funded by my own creative efforts, not by a corporate handout. It was a tangible symbol of my growing independence. The most frustrating part was their inability, or refusal, to genuinely engage with my work if I tried to explain a new animation project or a complex digital campaign. Their eyes would glaze over. They'd change the subject to Jessica's latest legal victory, or David's my younger cousin, who was now following Jessica's footsteps in law school academic achievements. They couldn't see the value in what I did because it didn't fit their predefined mold of success. "It's just computers, isn't it, Sarah?" my dad once commented, watching me work on a high-end animation render. "You know, something that will probably be done by AI in a few years. What's the longevity there?" He was still trying to find ways to diminish my chosen field, to predict its ultimate irrelevance. But their skepticism, once a source of deep pain, now felt strangely hollow. I was so deeply immersed in my work, so validated by my clients and my community, that their words no longer held the same power. They were just noise, background static that I had learned to tune out. I was building my empire in silence, brick by painful brick, fueled by my passion and their prophecies of failure. My bank account, once a source of anxiety, was now steadily growing, a quiet testament to my relentless effort. My client list was expanding, my skills were sharpening, and my confidence was solidifying. I was no longer the little girl shrinking under their disapproval. I was a force, quietly but powerfully, forging my own path, and I knew, with every fiber of my being, that one day, my success story would go viral, a triumphant explosion that would reach them, whether they were ready for it or not. And it would be a revelation, not just for them, but for anyone who ever dared to tell a dreamer they were destined for failure. It's an odd feeling, isn't it, to be experiencing genuine success, to feel that internal hum of accomplishment, while simultaneously navigating a world where the people closest to you either can't or won't see it. As Innovate Digital, the name I finally gave my growing digital content agency, began to pick up real momentum. My family's narrative of my destined failure didn't disappear. It simply morphed into something more insidious: small victories, big doubts. I remember the thrill of landing my first major contract. It wasn't just a few $100s for a quick animation. It was a multi-$1,000 project for a burgeoning e-commerce brand. It meant I could finally, truly, stop taking those odd jobs. It meant I could invest more into better equipment, subscribe to more advanced software, and even consider hiring a part-time assistant. I was bursting with pride, a quiet, internal explosion of validation. Of course, I cautiously shared the news with my parents during our weekly Sunday call. "Mom, Dad, I just landed a really big client. It's a huge step for Innovate Digital." My mom paused. "Oh, that's nice, dear. Is it a stable income? Like, will it last? You know, Jessica just got a new client too. A major international corporation. Her firm is really on a roll." My dad, ever the skeptic, chimed in. "Well, Sarah, that's good for now. But these online businesses, they can be here today, gone tomorrow. It's not like a proper salary with benefits. You're still building without a safety net, aren't you?" They couldn't, or wouldn't, see the inherent stability I was creating through diverse clients and growing expertise. They saw only the lack of a traditional HR department and a steady paycheck from a large corporation. Their ingrained belief that my path was inherently unstable completely overshadowed any actual evidence of its stability. Jessica was even more dismissive. She called me a few days later, ostensibly to congratulate me, but her tone was laden with a condescending air. "So, you finally got a decent gig. Huh, that's great. Sarah, just remember, the real money, the real influence, is in the corporate world. Freelancing is fine for a bit, but it's not a long-term strategy for building wealth. You're just trading hours for dollars, right? You'll burn out." She was so utterly blind to the scalable business model I was meticulously building, the passive income streams I was developing through online courses and digital product sales, and the team I was quietly assembling. To her, wealth meant climbing a corporate ladder. To me, it meant building an empire. We were speaking different languages of success. The constant need to defend my choices, to justify my very existence, was exhausting. I realized that arguing with them was futile. Their doubts weren't based on facts. They were based on their deeply held beliefs about what constituted a valid life. And their validation was a mirage I was no longer willing to chase. This marked a crucial shift in my approach. I began to establish firmer boundaries. When conversations veered into the familiar territory of questioning my career, comparing me to Jessica, or predicting my eventual failure, I would politely but firmly disengage. "I appreciate your concern," I'd tell my mom, "but my business is growing, and I'm happy with my choices. I prefer not to discuss my financials anymore." Or to Jessica, "My business model is different from your corporate world, but it's working for me. Let's talk about something else." It was met with initial shock and indignation. My mom would sigh dramatically, accusing me of being distant or unreachable. Jessica would get defensive, claiming she was just trying to help. But I held my ground. It was uncomfortable, yes, but necessary for my mental and emotional well-being. I was protecting my energy, learning to say no to their negative narratives. My apartment, which was slowly morphing into a functional, vibrant studio, became my sanctuary. It was a space where my creativity flourished, unburdened by judgment. I invested in professional lighting, a high-quality microphone, and more powerful rendering machines. My work began to evolve, becoming more polished, more ambitious. Liam, my mentor, was instrumental in this phase. He constantly reminded me to trust my gut, to focus on my craft, and to ignore the noise. "The best revenge is massive success, Sarah," he'd often quip. "And the sweetest part, they won't even see it coming until it's too late." His words resonated deeply with my desire for a quiet, undeniable triumph. Maya, my brilliant business partner, was my emotional anchor. She understood the unique pain of building something new while being dismissed by your own family. They're projecting their own fears onto you, Sarah, she'd say. They're afraid that if you succeed without their path, it invalidates their choices. It's not about you failing. It's about them protecting their own worldview. Her insights were incredibly helpful. They allowed me to depersonalize their judgments, to see them as a reflection of their insecurities, not a reflection of my worth. This understanding was a powerful shield against their negativity. As Innovate Digital grew, I began to diversify my income streams. Beyond client work, I started creating premium digital assets, custom animation templates, unique sound libraries, and specialized brushes for digital artists. I sold them on niche online marketplaces, and to my delight, they began to generate significant passive income. This was the wealth Jessica couldn't comprehend. Money earned without directly trading my time for it. I also invested heavily in my personal brand. I started a dedicated YouTube channel, not just for client showcases, but for educational content, tutorials, behind-the-scenes looks at my animation process, and industry insights. I built a loyal following, a community of aspiring artists and creators who admired my work and resonated with my journey. They were my cheerleaders, celebrating every subscriber milestone, every popular video. This was the external validation that truly mattered to me, organic, genuine, and earned. My first video to hit 100,000 views was a complete surprise. It was a tutorial on a complex animation technique, something I thought only a niche audience would appreciate. But it resonated. The comments poured in, "This is a game changer. Thank you for demystifying this. You're so talented. Why isn't this taught in schools?" That last comment always brought a bittersweet smile to my face, a quiet nod to my family's skepticism about formal education. My parents and Jessica remained blissfully unaware of this burgeoning success. My YouTube channel was under a pseudonym, and my freelance clients were mostly out of state. I kept my social media presence curated, sharing just enough to appear busy, but never revealing the full scale of my operations. It wasn't out of malice, but out of a need for peace. I knew that if they truly understood the extent of my success, it would either be dismissed as luck or become a new source of control and expectation. I needed to build my empire in peace, but the irony wasn't lost on me. While they were still subtly predicting my doom, I was building a significant financial buffer. I wasn't just paying my bills, I was investing, saving, and planning for the future. My bank account was growing steadily, a silent, powerful counter-argument to their every doubt. The internal shifts were perhaps even more profound than the external success. The young woman who had once shrunk under her family's judgment was slowly replaced by someone confident, assertive, and deeply secure in her choices. The shame I once felt about not following the traditional path had vanished, replaced by a fierce pride in my unconventional journey. I was learning to trust my own judgment, to value my unique perspective, and to recognize my own incredible resilience. There were still moments of doubt. Of course, the ingrained narratives of childhood are hard to completely erase. A difficult client, a technical glitch, or a slow month could sometimes trigger old anxieties. But now, I had tools to cope: my therapist, Chloe's steady support, Liam's wisdom, and Maya's unwavering belief. I had built a network of support that truly saw and celebrated me. One day, while reviewing my quarterly financial statements, I saw that my net worth had officially crossed the 7-figure mark. I stared at the number, a wave of profound emotion washing over me. It wasn't just money, it was proof. Proof that their predictions of destined for failure were utterly, completely, gloriously wrong. I had not only succeeded, but I had achieved a level of financial independence and creative fulfillment that many in their stable corporate world only dreamed of. And they still didn't know. They were still living in their bubble, still convinced I was just tinkering around or doing my little online thing. The thought was both exhilarating and a little bit sad. I had fought so hard for their approval, and now that I had unequivocally made it, they were still blind to it. But that blindness was about to change. My success story, built in silence and fueled by their skepticism, was growing too big to remain unseen. It was a snowball rolling downhill, gathering momentum, destined to become an avalanche, and I knew, with a quiet certainty, that soon, very soon, my viral success would break through their carefully constructed reality, forcing them to confront the undeniable truth of my achievements. The whispers of failure were about to be drowned out by the roar of my triumph. You know, there's a quiet, almost mischievous satisfaction in building an empire right under the noses of the people who swore you'd amount to nothing. While my family was busy living in their carefully constructed reality, still clinging to their narrative of my destined failure, my actual reality was rapidly diverging into something extraordinary. This was the phase of the build-up, where a quiet empire forms, meticulously and strategically. Completely off their radar, Innovate Digital wasn't just doing well, it was exploding. That initial multi-thousand-dollar contract felt like pocket change compared to the deals we were now closing. We were signing six-figure contracts with established tech companies and major brands, not just for animation, but for comprehensive digital content strategies, interactive web experiences, and even virtual reality content. My small team of freelancers had blossomed into a full-fledged company with over 20 talented full-time employees, working out of a sleek modern office space that I owned outright. My daily life was a blur of client meetings, creative brainstorming sessions, team management, and strategic planning. I was learning to be a CEO on the fly, making high-stakes decisions, navigating complex negotiations, and constantly innovating. The challenges were immense, but the fulfillment was even greater. Every successful project, every satisfied client, every new employee I hired was a silent victory against the pervasive negativity of my family. And yet, they remained utterly clueless. My parents and Jessica still believed I was running a little online thing, a freelance hobby. When I mentioned having an office, they imagined a cramped co-working space, not a prime commercial property. When I said I had employees, they pictured part-time interns, not highly skilled professionals with competitive salaries and benefits. The calls from home continued to be a masterclass in subtle dismissal. "Oh, Sarah, are you still doing that computer graphics thing on RAR?" my mom would ask, as if I were still drawing stick figures on a screen. "Your cousin, Mark, just got promoted to regional manager at his company. Very impressive. He's going to buy a vacation home next year." I just offer a vague, polite answer. "That's nice, Mom. Innovate Digital is keeping me busy." I had learned that giving them details was pointless. They would only filter it through their preconceived notions, turning my achievements into something smaller, less significant, less stable than their own definitions. Jessica was even more direct in her attempts to minimize my success. She'd call, ostensibly to check in, but the conversation would quickly devolve into a subtle competition she always assumed she was winning. "So, are you planning on getting health insurance through your little venture?" "Sarah," she'd inquire, her tone dripping with mock concern. "Or are you still on your own plan, you know? My firm offers amazing benefits, full coverage, dental, vision, even a fantastic 401k match, real security." It was infuriating. I was providing top-tier health, dental, and vision benefits for all my employees, along with a generous 401k match. My own personal investment portfolio was diversified across multiple high-performing funds, managed by a team of independent financial advisors who scoffed at the idea of a single corporate 401k being real security. But I didn't correct her. I just offered a non-committal, "I've got it handled." Jess, the financial disparity between us was becoming astronomical, though they had no idea. While Jessica celebrated her firm's year-end bonuses and steadily climbed the corporate ladder, Innovate Digital was generating multi-million-dollar revenues. My personal net worth was growing at a pace that would make her corporate lawyer salary look like a hobby. I was quietly buying investment properties, diversified stock portfolios, and even a small piece of a tech startup that caught my eye. My destined-for-failure self was becoming undeniably wealthy, all without a single diploma hanging on my wall. The sheer mental fortitude required to maintain this dual existence, the outwardly struggling artist for my family, and the quietly thriving entrepreneur in my real life, was immense. I knew that if they truly grasped the scale of my success, it would either ignite a new wave of jealousy and attempts to control, or they would try to co-opt my achievements as a reflection of their good parenting or my lucky break. I wasn't ready for that. I needed to build my foundation, my emotional resilience, before facing that inevitable confrontation. My support system outside the family became absolutely crucial during this period. Liam, my mentor, continued to offer sagely advice, always emphasizing focus and the long game. Success speaks for itself, Sarah, he'd say. You don't need to shout it from the rooftops. Let it resonate, and when it gets too loud to ignore, that's when you know you've won. Maya, my business partner and best friend, was my emotional barometer. She understood the intricacies of my family dynamic because she had faced similar dismissals from her own. She was the only one I could truly confide in about the frustrating irony of my situation. They're not seeing you, Sarah, Maya once observed. As we celebrated a huge client win, they're seeing a projection of their own fears. Your success challenges their entire belief system. It's easier for them to keep you in that struggling artist box than to admit they were wrong. Just keep building. The box won't be able to hold you much longer. Her words were prophetic. Innovate Digital was indeed outgrowing its box. We launched a new product line, a subscription-based platform offering premium animation assets and educational modules. It was an instant hit, generating hundreds of thousands of dollars in recurring revenue within months. This was the kind of scalable business that traditional careers simply couldn't touch. My influence in the digital creative space grew exponentially. I was invited to speak at major tech conferences, featured in industry publications, and my personal brand channel amassed a following of over 1 million subscribers. My viral content was, in many ways, an extension of my life's philosophy of proving that unconventional paths could lead to extraordinary outcomes. My tutorials were popular not just for their technical clarity, but for the underlying message of empowerment. I often shared anecdotes, veiled thinly enough that my family wouldn't recognize them, about overcoming skepticism and building something from nothing. My audience, a global community of aspiring creators, resonated with this message. They saw me as an inspiration, a beacon of possibility in a rapidly evolving world. The irony was delicious. While my family continued to worry about my stability and my lack of traditional qualifications, my hobby was educating hundreds of thousands of people, inspiring millions, and generating more wealth than they could fathom. My success was a quiet, powerful hum, building to a crescendo. I maintained my boundaries with my family rigorously. I politely declined invitations to family vacations they would organize, citing work commitments that were generating more revenue than their combined salaries. I kept my personal life private, sharing only superficial details. It wasn't out of spite, but out of self-preservation. I needed to focus my energy on what truly mattered: building my company, nurturing my relationships with those who supported me, and maintaining my own peace of mind. There were moments, late at night, when the old doubts would try to creep in: a sudden dip in subscriber numbers, a challenging client feedback, a stressful negotiation. The ingrained voice of my dad, predicting failure, would echo faintly. But then, I would look at the growth charts, the financial statements, the emails from grateful users, and the faces of my dedicated team, and that quiet pride, that fierce determination, would reassert itself. I was no longer the girl who believed their prophecy. I was the woman who had rewritten her own destiny. The destined for failure narrative was becoming an increasingly fragile facade. It was a dam holding back an ocean of success. And I knew, with every fiber of my being, that the dam was about to break. My viral success, built brick by painful brick, unseen and unacknowledged by them, was about to become impossible to ignore. The countdown had begun, though they had no idea. The story of my success was about to go viral, and this time, they wouldn't be able to turn a blind eye. You know? The funny thing about a dam breaking is that it often happens in the most unexpected, almost mundane ways. For years, I had meticulously kept my growing empire a secret from my family, letting them cling to their outdated narrative of my destined failure while I built something truly extraordinary. I knew the reveal would come eventually, but I never imagined it would happen the way it did, a sudden, unstoppable viral explosion that crashed directly into their carefully constructed world, leaving them utterly bewildered. It was a Tuesday afternoon, ironically, the day I usually had my weekly check-in call with my mom. I was in my office, immersed in a complex animation project for a new client, my team buzzing around me. My phone started vibrating non-stop. Notifications from my social media channels, emails, messages from Maya, Liam, and even my internal team. Sarah. You need to see this, Maya's voice burst through the phone, barely containing her excitement. Your inspiring creator video. It just hit 5 million views in 2 hours. It's trending everywhere. You're going viral. My inspiring creator series was a passion project, something I did outside of client work. It was a collection of short, highly stylized animated stories about the struggles and triumphs of independent artists and entrepreneurs. Each video ended with a powerful, uplifting message about perseverance and self-belief. The latest one, The Unseen Path, was particularly close to my heart. Its subtly woven elements of my own journey, the initial dismissals, the lonely grind, the quiet victories. I hadn't explicitly mentioned my family, but the themes of defying expectations resonated deeply with my audience. I rushed to my computer, my heart pounding. She was right. The numbers were exploding. 5 million. Then 7, then 10 million views in a blink of an eye. Comments were flooding in, hundreds, thousands, then tens of thousands. People were sharing it on every platform imaginable. Celebrities were retweeting it. Major news outlets were picking it up. My face, or at least my animated avatar, was everywhere. My success story, meticulously crafted in silence, had just gone viral, and the internet, in its unpredictable glory, was about to deliver it directly to my family's doorstep. The calls started immediately, not from my family, not yet, but from media outlets, eager to interview the overnight sensation, requests for speaking engagements, collaboration offers from major brands, even inquiries from publishing houses about a book deal. It was exhilarating, overwhelming, and terrifying all at once. My quiet empire was no longer quiet. It was a roaring success, echoing across the digital landscape. I tried to mentally prepare for the inevitable. My family, who had meticulously avoided any deep dive into my professional life for years, would soon be forced to confront the undeniable truth. They couldn't ignore this. It was too big. The actual discovery came, as fate would have it. During my mother's weekly book club meeting, my mom, usually glued to the local news, was surprisingly tech-savvy for her age and enjoyed browse online articles. According to my Aunt Carol, who later recounted the story with wide-eyed astonishment, the book club had taken a break, and my mom was idly scrolling through her newsfeed. "Oh, look at this," my mom apparently said, completely casually. Another one of those inspiring young people doing something on the internet. The Unseen Path. It's called. Sounds rather poetic. Then the video started playing. The distinctive animation style. The familiar voice, my own, though subtly modulated for the narration. The underlying message that I poured my soul into. Her eyes must have widened. Her casual scrolling must have stopped. "Wait a minute," my Aunt Carol remembered her saying, leaning closer to the screen. "That animation, that style, it looks familiar, and that voice, it sounds just like Sarah's. No, it can't be. Sarah's doing her little freelance thing, not this viral phenomenon." But it was at the video clearly credited Sarah Innovate Digital at the end. The comments below were filled with praise, discussing the profound impact of the video, celebrating the brilliant artist behind it. My mother, according to Aunt Carol, went white. She excused herself from the room, leaving the book club ladies buzzing with speculation. The destined for failure daughter, the one they worried about, was not only a success, she was a viral sensation, an internet phenomenon, and the author of a deeply personal, inspiring story that had just touched millions, without them knowing. The phone call from my mom came an hour later. Her voice was thin, shaky, a mixture of shock, confusion, and a hint of something I couldn't quite place, perhaps even pride, fighting its way through years of denial. Sarah, is that your video, the one everyone is talking about, the unseen path? Her voice trembled. Yes, Mom, I said, my voice calm. I knew this moment was coming. It is, but how? When did you? It has millions of views, and Innovate Digital. What is that? Is that your little online thing? Her disbelief was palpable. She still couldn't reconcile the small, struggling image of me with the global phenomenon she was seeing. It's my company, Mom, I explained, trying to keep the triumph out of my voice. It's what I've been building for years. We create digital content, animation, software solutions. The video is a passion project that happened to resonate. The conversation was stilted, awkward. She kept asking questions, but her mind seemed unable to fully process the answers. She hung up, clearly needing time to process the seismic shift that had just occurred in her perception of me. Then came Jessica. Her call was less shocked, more accusatory. Sarah, what is this? She demanded, her voice tight with thinly veiled fury. Why didn't you tell us millions of views, Innovate Digital, a company you've been hiding this from us? The accusation of secrecy overshadowed any acknowledgement of my achievement. Hiding it, I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping me. Jessica, I've been telling you for years what I was doing. You and Mom and Dad just chose not to listen. You dismissed it as a hobby, destined for failure. I stopped telling you the details because it was exhausting fighting for validation that was never coming. She spluttered. But this is huge. Why wouldn't you want us to know this changes everything? It doesn't change anything, Jessica, I said, my voice hardening. It just changes your perception of it. My success didn't just happen overnight. It was built over years, in silence. While you were all busy telling me I should get a real job or that I was idealistic, the call ended with Jessica still in a state of indignant disbelief. She couldn't wrap her head around the idea that I had achieved such magnitude of success without her knowledge, without her approval, and without following the path she believed was the only one. The next few days were a whirlwind. Media interviews, congratulatory messages from friends, old acquaintances popping out of the woodwork, and, of course, the awkward, strained interactions with my family. They couldn't avoid it. My face was on news articles. My company was being featured on business channels, and my unseen path video was being dissected and praised by millions. My dad, in a rare moment of genuine vulnerability, actually came to my office. He walked through the bustling open-plan space, past my team of talented animators and developers, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and bewilderment. He saw the high-tech equipment, the collaborative atmosphere, the vibrant energy. It was a far cry from the tinkering around he'd always envisioned. He stood in my private office, looking out at the city skyline from my large window. This is what you built, he asked, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. All this time, you were building this. I nodded. Yes, Dad, all this time. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and something akin to wonder. We were so wrong, Sarah, he finally admitted, his voice rough with emotion. We just wanted you to be safe. We thought we knew what was best. We never truly saw this. He gestured vaguely at my thriving company. We truly thought you were destined for failure. We couldn't have been more wrong. That admission, so raw and unforced, pierced through years of built-up resentment. It wasn't an apology, not in words, but it was an acknowledgement, a recognition of my journey and my worth that I had craved for so long. The inevitable discovery had happened. My success story had not just gone viral. It had crashed head-on into their reality, shattering their preconceived notions. They could no longer dismiss me, ignore me, or label me. The destined for failure prophecy had been unequivocally disproven, not by my arguments, but by the undeniable, overwhelming roar of my triumph. And as they grappled with this new reality, I felt a powerful surge of liberation. The quiet empire was quiet no more, and its voice was finally being heard, loud and clear, by everyone. The viral explosion of the unseen path didn't just break through my family's denial, it shattered it into a million pieces. The shock, the disbelief, the thinly veiled anger from Jessica. It was all a cacophony that now echoed in their once impenetrable bubble. But for me, it was the sound of 1,000 chains breaking. This was the moment of the unveiling, the aftermath, and the new narrative, a story where I, the destined for failure black sheep, finally stood in my full power. The immediate days after the video went viral were a whirlwind of media requests, interview opportunities, and a deluge of congratulatory messages from every corner of the internet. My face, or at least my animated self, was on news feeds, business podcasts, and even mainstream morning shows. Innovate Digital, my quiet empire, was now a loud, undeniable force. My family, still reeling, reacted in predictably varied ways. My mom, after her initial shock and tearful phone call, started to show a cautious, almost hesitant pride. She'd call, no longer asking about my little hobby, but about the company and the video. She even sent me a link to an article about me from a local paper, with a shaky handwritten note, so proud, "Dear, we always knew you had it in you." It was a tentative step, a small olive branch that, for the first time, felt genuine. My dad, the stoic pragmatist, was more subdued but equally impacted. His visit to my office had clearly been a turning point. He saw the tangible evidence of my success, the bustling team, the sophisticated operation. He witnessed the scope of what I had built firsthand. He still wasn't prone to effusive praise, but his questions became insightful, respectful. He asked about market strategy, about expansion plans, about the challenges of managing a growing team. It was the kind of engagement I had yearned for my entire life, a recognition of my competence that transcended his preconceived notions of success. The real fireworks, of course, came from Jessica. She called me a few days after the video went supernova, her voice tight with a mixture of resentment and barely concealed fury. "So, the little online thing turned into this," she snapped. "Why the secrecy? Sarah, why did you keep us in the dark? Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for Mom and Dad? And for me? People at my firm are asking me about your company." I took a deep breath. This was the confrontation I had been preparing for, emotionally, for years. This wasn't about her embarrassment. It was about her shattered worldview, her crumbling sense of superiority. "Jessica," I said, my voice calm, every word deliberate. There was no secrecy. I was doing exactly what I always said I was doing. I was building a company. I was creating digital content. I was pursuing my passion. You, Mom, and Dad were the ones who consistently dismissed it as a hobby, who told me I was destined for failure, who refused to acknowledge it as a real job because it didn't fit your narrow definition of success. She sputtered, trying to interrupt. "That's not fair. We were just worried about you. We wanted you to have stability." "No," I countered, cutting her off firmly but without malice. "You wanted me to conform. You wanted me to follow your path, because anything else was, in your eyes, a failure. You constantly compared me to you, Jessica, implying I was less capable, less smart, less driven because I didn't get an Ivy League degree or work at a prestigious law firm. Every time I tried to share my progress, it was met with skepticism, pity, or a subtle put-down." I paused, letting the truth hang in the air. I stopped sharing details because it was emotionally exhausting. I needed to build this in peace, without constant judgment. My success isn't a secret weapon I deployed against you. It's the natural result of years of hard work, dedication, and believing in myself when no one else did. And frankly, your inability to see it, your continued dismissal, was a bigger reflection of your own biases than it ever was of my potential. The line went silent. I could hear her breathing, ragged and uneven. Finally, she spoke, her voice much softer, tinged with a raw vulnerability I had never heard before. I guess you're right," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I always thought you were just being stubborn. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you." That was it. That was the moment. Not a grand apology, but an honest admission. A crack in the facade of her own self-righteousness. It wasn't about winning, it was about being seen. And for the first time in our lives, Jessica truly saw me, not as her lesser sister, but as an independent, formidable woman who had forged her own extraordinary path. The confrontation with Jessica, while difficult, was ultimately cleansing. It cleared the air, stripping away years of unspoken resentment and misunderstanding. Our relationship began a slow, tentative rebuilding process. She started asking me for advice on her law firm's social media strategy, genuinely interested in my expertise. I, in turn, offered insights into navigating corporate politics from a different perspective. We began to form a new kind of sibling bond, one based on mutual respect for our very different strengths. My personal life flourished alongside my professional growth. I continued seeing Dr. Ramirez, who helped me integrate this new, powerful version of myself, ensuring I didn't lose the empathy and kindness that were core to who I am. I learned to differentiate between healthy boundaries and emotional walls, understanding that true connection requires both vulnerability and self-protection. My chosen family, Liam and Maya, celebrated my success with unadulterated joy. They had been there for the lonely grind, for the unseen battles, for every small victory. They were proud, not just of the millions of views, but of the person I had become: resilient, courageous, and authentically me. Maya even came on board as the Chief Marketing Officer for Innovate Digital, her brilliance elevating our brand even further. I also began to use my platform for good. The viral success of The Unseen Path opened doors to speak at schools and community events, sharing my story with young people who felt pressured to follow traditional paths. I talked about the importance of finding your own passion, of trusting your intuition, and of building your own definition of success. I emphasized that a college degree is a valuable tool for many, but not the only tool, and certainly not the only path to a fulfilling life. My financial success became a tool for freedom, not a measure of worth. I established a foundation to provide grants and mentorship for aspiring young digital artists and entrepreneurs from underserved communities, giving them the support I never had from my own family. It was a way to pay it forward, to turn my struggles into a pathway for others. Life settled into a new, harmonious rhythm. The echoes of Destined for Failure faded into a distant, almost comical memory. My family, while never fully shedding their traditional worldview, learned to respect my choices. They eventually understood that my path, though unconventional, had led me to a level of success and happiness that was undeniable. They no longer worried about me, they admired me. I looked back at the younger version of myself, the girl who cried into her pillow, genuinely believing she was doomed to fail. I wanted to tell her, you are not defined by their doubts. Your worth is not determined by their approval. Trust your gut, work hard, build your own path, because one day your success will not only speak for itself, but it will inspire others. My story, the one they said would be a failure, had gone viral, but it wasn't just about the views or the money. It was about reclaiming my narrative, about proving to myself that my intuition, my passion, and my resilience were more powerful than any prophecy of doom. It was about showing that the unseen path could lead to the brightest future. So, if you're out there, and someone, especially someone close to you, is telling you you're destined for failure because you're not following their script, hear this: they don't get to write your story. Only you do. Let their negativity be the spark that ignites your fire. Build your dream quietly, persistently, even when no one believes in you, and then, when the time is right, let your success speak for itself. It will be the loudest, most undeniable revelation they've ever heard. You are capable of so much more than anyone gives you credit for. Go prove it.